The Korthax had ruled the outer regions of the galaxy for 12,000 years. They were monsters by any measure that mattered. Each warrior stood 3 meters tall, covered in natural armor that could stop most energy weapons. They had 6 limbs, 4 of which ended in claws sharp enough to cut through steel. Their muscles could tear apart reinforced doors. Their senses could track prey across kilometers of terrain. They were built to kill, and they were very good at it. For the Korthax, hunting was everything. It was their religion, their art, their politics, and their way of life. Young Korthax proved themselves worthy through their first hunt. Leaders maintained power by hunting the most dangerous prey. Their entire civilization was structured around one simple truth. They were the apex predators of the galaxy, and everything else was prey. Every 1,000 years, the Korthax held what they called the Grand Harvest. They would choose one species, one civilization, and hunt them across every world they inhabited. It was the greatest honor in their culture. Billions of Korthax would participate. The hunt would continue until the prey species was extinct or scattered beyond recovery. In 12,000 years, they had held 11 grand harvests. 11 species had fallen before them. When Korthax scouts discovered Earth, they watched the humans for 3 months. They studied human cities, human technology, and human behavior. What they saw made them excited. Humans were small, slow, and weak. They had no natural armor, no claws, no fangs worth mentioning. They relied entirely on their tools and technology to survive. Perfect prey, challenging enough to be interesting, but weak enough to make the hunt enjoyable. The High Council of the Korthax Dominion met in their great hall on the homeworld of Kordax Prime. 50 of the greatest huntmasters in their history gathered to make the decision. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would be the target of the 12th Grand Harvest. Across the Dominion, billions of Korthax warriors prepared their weapons and sharpened their claws. The hunt would begin soon. Huntmaster Skrull was chosen to lead the first wave. He was a legend among his people, having participated in 5 grand harvests and personally claiming over 3,000 kills. He was cunning, patient, and ruthless. The High Council gave him 50 of the finest warriors in the Dominion and sent them to ward a human mining colony on a planet the humans called Kepler 442. But the colony was small. Only 200 humans working to extract rare minerals from the planet's crust. Skrull studied the data on his warriors as they approached. Most of the humans were old by their species standards, in their 50s and 60s. They were laborers, not soldiers. The attack would be a massacre. It's a perfect way to announce the beginning of the Grand Harvest. Skrull's ship entered orbit around Kepler 4 to be in the early morning hours. His warriors prepared themselves with ritual prayers and the sharpening of weapons. They would land in the center of the colony, announce their presence according to tradition, and then begin the hunt. The humans would run, would hide, would beg. It was always the same with prey species. The landing craft touched down with a heavy thud that shook the ground. The cargo doors opened, and Skrull led his warriors out into the dim light of the planet's red sun. The colony was quiet. Too quiet. Skrull's instincts, honed over centuries of hunting, told him something was wrong. But he was Korthax. What could prey do to a predator? The warning sirens had gone off 15 minutes before the Korthax landed. In the colony's control center, a woman named Sarah Chen watched the alien ships descend on her monitors. She was 63 years old, the colony's chief engineer, and a veteran of 3 human wars. She hit the alarm and then opened the colony-wide comm channel. All personnel, this is Chen. We have hostile contact. Unknown alien ships landing in Sector 7. This is not a drill. All combat-trained personnel to the armory. Everyone else, 2 emergency shelters. We have 15 minutes. Move. 37 of the colony's 200 workers had military backgrounds. They ran toward the armory while the others fled to the reinforced shelters deep underground. Chen stayed at her console, pulling up schematics of the colony and the weapons inventory. They had mining explosives, industrial lasers, and a small cache of firearms kept for emergency use. It wasn't much, but it would have to be enough. The miners reached the armory in 4 minutes. A man named Marcus Webb, former Marine Corps sergeant, took charge without anyone asking. He had fought in the Martian Independence War and the Resource Wars before retiring to mine asteroids and planets in peace. That peace was apparently over. "Listen up," Webb said, as people grabbed weapons and body armor designed for industrial accidents, not combat. "We don't know what these things are or what they want, but they came in warships, and they didn't try to talk first. That tells me everything I need to know. Chen, what do we have for explosives?" 200 kilos of mining charges, Chen's voice came over the cum. Plus, cutting charges, breaching explosives, and about 50 industrial det cord spools. Webb smiled grimly. "That'll do. Everyone, listen carefully. We're not defending this colony. We're turning it into a kill box." The miners worked fast. They placed charges at structural weak points throughout the main habitat. They rigged the ventilation system with chemical compounds from the refinery that would burn hot and fast. They set up crossfires using mining lasers that could cut through rock. They prepared fallback positions and escape routes. In 15 minutes, they turned a peaceful mining colony into a death trap. Skrull led his warriors into the main habitat module. The corridors were empty and silent. The lighting was dim, set to night cycle illumination. His thermal sensors showed heat signatures throughout the complex, but they were scattered and hiding. Good. The hunt was always better when the prey tried to hide. "Spread out," Skrull commanded his warriors. Standard hunting formation. "Drive them toward the center, and we will feast." That was when the first charge detonated. The explosion tore through the corridor behind Skrull's group, killing 3 warriors instantly and wounding 2 more. Before they could react, the lights went out completely, plunging them into darkness. The Korthax had excellent night vision, but the humans had planned for that. Strobing emergency lights activated, flashing at frequencies designed to overwhelm their predator eyes. Then the shooting started. Humans firing from concealed positions, using the colony's structure to their advantage. Hitting and moving before the Korthax could respond, Skrull roared orders to his warriors, trying to organize a counterattack. But every time they moved toward a human position, they triggered another trap. Floors collapsed into improvised pit traps. Corridors filled with burning gas. Bulkheads slammed shut, separating warriors from their pack. This was not how prey behaved. This was not how the hunt was supposed to go. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, 38 Korthax warriors lay dead throughout the colony. 12 escaped with Skrull, many of them wounded. On the human side, 37 miners died defending their home. But they won. As Skrull's ship fled the planet, the Huntmaster stared at the colony growing smaller below. He had lived for 4 centuries and led 100 successful hunts. He had never retreated before. Never. The High Council would demand an explanation, but Skrull had no explanation. Only a warning that he knew they would not believe. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was something else entirely. Something dangerous, the news of the defeat at Kepler 440b, spread through the Korthax dominion like a shockwave. At first, most refused to believe it. 50 elite warriors defeated by 200 humans, most of them elderly laborers. Impossible. There had to be some mistake in the reports. Perhaps Skrull had encountered human military forces, not civilians. Perhaps there was some hidden defense system. But Skrull's testimony was clear and consistent. The humans had been miners and engineers. They had used mining equipment and improvised explosives. They had turned their own colony into a weapon and fought with a creativity and viciousness that no prey species should possess. Most disturbing of all, they had not fought with fear. They had fought with anger. The High Council met again, this time in emergency session. Some members called for Skrull's execution for cowardice. Others demanded a full investigation. But Huntmaster Voresh, eldest of the council, silenced them all with a single gesture. "The 12th Grand Harvest has been announced," Voresh said, his voice carrying the weight of 6 centuries. "We have never abandoned a Grand Harvest. If we do so now, our honor dies." our civilization dies. We are Korthax. We are the apex predators of this galaxy. One defeat does not change that. The council voted. The grand harvest would continue, but this time with overwhelming force. They would commit their full military strength to the extermination of humanity. 10,000 ships carrying 500,000 warriors would descend upon human space. They would strike at every human world simultaneously, giving them no chance to prepare, no chance to organize a defense. Skrull was not executed for his failure. Instead, he was promoted to War Master and given command of the invasion's first wave. The Council's logic was simple. He had faced humans and survived. That made him an expert. He would lead the assault on Tau Ceti, one of humanity's major colony clusters. As the Korthax fleet prepared for war, humanity was not idle. The miners from Kepler-4 for 2b had transmitted everything they learned about Korthax anatomy, tactics, and technology to Earth. Human scientists, soldiers, and engineers studied the data with desperate intensity. Admiral Elizabeth Park stood in the command center of humanity's largest military station, reading reports from across human space. She was 70 years old, gray-haired and tired. She had spent 40 years in the fleet fighting pirates, terrorists, and other humans in dozens of small wars. Now she faced something entirely new, an alien invasion. "What do we know?" she asked her staff. "They're strong and fast," answered Colonel James Torres, the station's intelligence officer. "Their armor can take hits from standard plasma weapons. They hunt in packs with sophisticated pack tactics. They're experienced soldiers who've been fighting for centuries. Weaknesses: they're ambush predators. They rely on speed and overwhelming force in short bursts. Their muscle structure suggests they tire faster than humans in extended combat. They have rigid tactical doctrine based on their hunting traditions. And they've never faced an enemy that fights back effectively." Park smiled without humor. "Then let's give them something they've never seen before. Send the message to all human worlds, stations, and ships. The Korthax are coming to hunt us. Let's teach them why Earth's most dangerous predators went extinct when we showed up." The message spread through human space faster than the Korthax fleet. Every colony began preparations. Every ship armed itself. Every station became a fortress. But humanity did not simply prepare to defend. They prepared to attack. The Korthax fleet arrived at Tau, steady, expecting to find frightened humans hiding behind whatever defenses they could manage. Instead, they found the human fleet waiting in attack formation. Admiral Park had committed every ship in the sector to one massive engagement. She knew the humans would lose, but that was not the point. The point was to make the Korthax pay for every meter of space. The battle began with the humans, launching every missile they had in one massive volley. Thousands of warheads streaked across space toward the Korthax fleet. The aliens shot down most of them, but dozens got through, damaging ships and destroying some of the smaller vessels. Before the Korthax could respond, the human ships accelerated forward at maximum thrust. Skrull watched from his command ship in disbelief, as the human fleet charged directly at his forces. This was suicide. What were they thinking? Then he understood. The humans were not trying to win a space battle. They were trying to deny the Korthax the advantage of their superior weapons by closing point-blank range. Human ships rammed Korthax vessels. Others detonated nuclear weapons at close range, sacrificing themselves to destroy enemy ships. Smaller human craft latched onto larger Korthax ships like parasites, cutting through holes with industrial torches and boarding parties. It was chaos. It was madness. It was working. The Korthax won the battle, but at terrible cost. They lost 300 ships and 50,000 warriors. The surviving human ships fled deeper into the Tau Ceti system, forcing the Korthax to pursue them through minefields and defensive platforms. Every kilometer cost more ships, more warriors, more time. When the Korthax finally achieved orbit around the 3 inhabited planets of Tau Ceti, they had lost a third of their invasion force. Skrull looked at the casualty reports and felt something he had never experienced before: doubt. but the hunt had to continue. Honor demanded it. The ground invasion began across all 3 planets simultaneously. 150,000 Korthax warriors landed in dropships, ready to hunt humans through their cities and settlements. They expected the humans to evacuate civilians and meet them with organized military resistance. They expected a real battle this time, not a trap like at Kepler 4-4 to be. What they got was something far worse. The humans did not evacuate. Every civilian who could hold a weapon stayed and fought. The Korthax entered cities and found them transformed into 3-dimensional mazes of death. Every building was fortified. Every street had multiple firing positions. Every tunnel and sewer was a potential ambush site. The humans did not meet them in open battle. They bled the Korthax through 1,000 small engagements. A Korthax warrior named Thrax kept a personal journal, practice common among his people for warriors engaged in memorable hunts. His entries from Tau Ceti told a story very different from what the Korthax expected. Day 1. We landed in a human city called New Jakarta. The buildings are tall, but poorly defended. My pack cleared 3 structures with minimal resistance. This will be easier than feared. Day 5. We have not slept well in days. The humans attack at night, during our rest cycles. They use noise weapons to wake us, then disappear before we can retaliate. My packmates are becoming irritable and unfocused. Day 12. Lost Corval today. A human child, no more than 15 years old by their standards, lured him into a building with cries for help. The building was rigged to explode. The child died too. What kind of prey kills itself to kill a predator? Day 20. We are down to 12 warriors from the original 20. The humans watch us constantly. We see their drones, their cameras, their spotters. They know where we are at all times. We know nothing about them until they strike. My pack leader says this is still a hunt. It does not feel like a hunt. It feels like we are the ones being hunted. Day 30. Only 3 of us left. We have not completed a ritual, not sung the hunting songs, not honored our kills as tradition demands. We are just trying to survive until relief arrives. The humans never stop. They attack in shifts, always fresh warriors against exhausted defenders. How can prey have such endurance? Across Tau Ceti's 3 planets, similar stories played out. The Korthax were physically superior in every measurable way, but humans had one critical advantage. They could fight longer. Korthax warriors, built for quick strikes and overwhelming force, had to rest after intense combat. Humans organized in shifts, ensuring the pressure never relented. Weeks turned into months. The Korthax controlled the landing zones and little else. Every attempt to push deeper into human territory cost more lives. Supply lines were constantly harassed. Relief forces were ambushed. The invasion was not failing quickly. It was failing slowly, grinding down through endless attrition. Skrull sat in his command center, reviewing reports from across the 3 planets. Casualties were catastrophic. Morale was collapsing. Warriors who had fought in 10 grand harvests were requesting to return home. And most disturbing of all, the humans were adapting. Every tactic the Korthax used worked once, maybe twice. By the 3rd attempt, the humans had already developed countermeasures. The War Master made his decision. He sent a message to the High Council on Korthax Prime, request additional forces for Tau Ceti. Situation is more difficult than projected. Humans are not prey. Repeat, humans are not prey. They are something else. The High Council read his message with growing rage. Skrull was not just reporting difficulties. He was questioning the fundamental truth of Korthax existence. They were the apex predators. Humans were prey. There could be no other truth. The Council sent their reply. Reinforce Tau Ceti with reserve forces. Send the remaining fleet to strike at Earth itself. Break their homeworld and break their spirit. The Grand Harvest continues. The decision to attack Earth was made in anger and desperation. The High Council of the Korthax Dominion refused to accept that the 12th Grand Harvest could fail. In their 12,000-year history, they had never abandoned a hunt. To do so now would shatter everything they believed about themselves. Better to commit everything they had to risk total defeat than to admit they had chosen prey too dangerous to hunt. They gathered what remained of their military strength. 3,000 ships carrying 200,000 warriors, including many of the council members themselves. This would be the final strike. They would descend on Earth, the human homeworld, and kill enough humans to break their will to fight. Every prey species had a breaking point. Find it, cross it, and the prey would scatter. The Korthax were certain of this. They had seen it 11 times before. Admiral Park received the intelligence reports about the incoming Korthax fleet with grim determination. Earth's defenses were strong, but not strong enough to stop 3,000 warships. She had perhaps 300 ships available to defend humanity's birthplace. Most of those were damaged from previous engagements. She was outnumbered 10 to 1. In any conventional battle, Earth would fall within days. So we don't fight a conventional battle, Park said to her assembled commanders. The Korthax think like predators. They want a quick kill, a decisive victory. We're going to deny them that. We're going to make them chase us through the entire solar system, bleeding them the whole way. The plan was simple, but brutal. The human fleet would not defend Earth directly. Instead, they would position themselves throughout the solar system and force the Korthax to fight their way inward. Every planet, every moon, every asteroid station would be a battle. The Korthax would win those battles, but each victory would cost them ships and time. By the time they reached Earth, they would be weakened and exhausted. The Korthax fleet entered the solar system at high speed, confident and eager. They had come to end this hunt once and for all. They would strike at Earth and show humanity what it meant to be prey. The first human ships intercepted them near Neptune. It was a small force, only 20 vessels, but they attacked with suicidal intensity. They used the planet's gravity well to slingshot themselves at the Korthax formation, launching missiles and then ramming damaged enemy ships. The engagement lasted less than an hour. All 20 human ships were destroyed. But they took 40 Korthax vessels with them. The pattern repeated at Uranus, then Saturn. Small groups of human ships would attack, inflict damage far beyond what their numbers should allow, and die. The Korthax kept winning, but the victories felt hollow. They were losing ships to an enemy that should have already been defeated. At Jupiter, the humans changed tactics. Instead of attacking directly, they used the massive planet's moons as weapons. Europa Station detonated its fusion reactors as Korthax ships passed nearby. Ganymede's orbital defense platforms fired from concealment, targeting vulnerable engine sections before being destroyed. Io's, mines, and industrial complexes became improvised missile bases. Huntmaster Vorash, commanding from the fleet's flagship, watched his forces slowly diminish. He had started with 3,000 ships. By the time they passed Jupiter, he had 2,700. The numbers were still overwhelmingly in the Korthax favor, but the constant attrition was having an effect on morale. Warriors who had never known defeat were starting to fear. How much further to Earth? Vorash demanded. 3 more days at current speed, his navigator replied. But the humans have significant defenses in the inner system. Mars is heavily fortified. The asteroid belt has been weaponized. And Earth itself is protected by thousands of defense platforms. Vorash made a decision. Full speed to Earth, no more stops. We smash through whatever defenses remain and end this hunt. The fleet accelerated, pushing their engines to maximum. They would reach Earth in 30 hours instead of 3 days. The humans would have no time to prepare. This would be the killing blow, but Admiral Park had anticipated this move. She had positioned her remaining ships not to block the Korthax advance, but to harass it. Human vessels would appear from asteroid hiding spots, fire missiles, and disappear before the Korthax could respond. The damage was minimal, but it forced the alien fleet to maintain shields and weapons ready. Burning through fuel and straining their systems, when the Korthax fleet finally reached Earth, they found a planet prepared for war. Thousands of orbital platforms armed with weapons ranging from simple kinetic impactors to advanced particle beams. The moon bristled with missile silos. Space stations had been converted into fortresses. And hidden throughout the debris field of destroyed satellites were thousands of automated mines. The Battle of Earth began with the Korthax attempting orbital bombardment. They would destroy the human defense platforms, then land ground forces for the final hunt. It was a sound strategy that had worked on dozens of worlds before. The defense platforms fired back, filling space with missiles and energy beams. The Korthax shields held, but the sheer volume of fire forced them to slow their advance. That was when the mines activated. Thousands of small fusion devices, each barely larger than a human fist, detonated throughout the Korthax formation. Individually, they did little damage. Together, they overwhelmed shields and tore into whole armor. The Korthax fleet pushed forward, losing ships with every kilometer. They were still winning, still advancing, but the cost was staggering. When they finally established low orbit ready to begin landing operations, they had lost 800 ships. Nearly a third of their invasion force destroyed before a single warrior set foot on Earth. Vorash reviewed the casualty reports with growing horror. This was worse than Tau Ceti, worse than any battle in Korthax history. But they were here now, in orbit around the human homeworld. The hunt could still succeed. They just needed to land their warriors and let them do what they did best. Begin landing operations, Vorash ordered. 17 sites, as planned. Kill everything that moves. The dropships descended through Earth's atmosphere, carrying tens of thousands of Korthax warriors. They landed in major cities across the planet. New York, London, Beijing, Mumbai, São Paulo, Lagos, and a dozen others. The warriors emerged from their ships, ready to hunt, ready to kill, ready to claim their victory. What they found was 8 billion. Humans ready to fight back. The Korthax had expected military resistance. They got civilians with hunting rifles. They expected ordered defenses. They got chaos and improvisation. They expected fear. They got anger. In New York, construction workers turned their equipment into weapons. In London, historical weapons from museums were broken out and used alongside modern firearms. In Beijing, millions of people evacuated from the landing site only to circle back and surround it. In Mumbai, the Korthax warriors found themselves fighting in narrow streets where their size was a disadvantage. Not an advantage, but it was in São Paulo where the Korthax faced their greatest challenge. The landing site was in the city's industrial sector, surrounded by factories and warehouses. The human population did not flee. They fortified their positions and prepared to fight. When the Korthax emerged from their dropships, they walked into a carefully prepared killing ground. Skrull was among the warriors who landed in São Paulo. He had survived Kepler 4 for 2B, fought through Tau Ceti, and now stood on Earth itself. This would be his greatest hunt. He led his warriors forward following standard pack tactics, expecting the humans to scatter before them. Instead, the humans channeled them into narrow streets between warehouses. Explosions collapsed buildings, blocking retreat routes. Snipers fired from rooftops, targeting pack leaders like Skrull. When the Korthax tried to scale buildings to reach the snipers, the humans dropped improvised explosives from above. When they tried to break through walls, they triggered booby traps. For 3 days, Skrull and his warriors fought through São Paulo. The humans never stopped attacking. They would hit and fade, strike and withdraw, always keeping the Korthax off balance. Skrull's pack of 50 warriors was reduced to 30, then 20, then 10. On the third night, surrounded in the ruins of a collapsed factory, Skrull finally understood the truth he had been trying to deny since Kepler 4 to B. The Korthax were not losing because the humans were stronger. They were losing because humans could endure longer than any predator species had the right to expect. Korthax. Warriors were ambush predators. They struck hard and fast, then rested to recover their strength. It was how their species had evolved. It was how they hunted. But humans were different. Humans were persistence hunters. They could chase prey for hours, days, even weeks. They would follow a wounded animal until it collapsed from exhaustion. That was how humanity's ancient ancestors had hunted megafauna on Earth. They simply refused to stop until their prey dropped. Dead, and now the Korthax. Were the prey being chased to exhaustion? Scrawls. Communicator crackled to life. It was Vorash, calling from orbit. All ground forces, retreat to extraction points. The grand harvest is over. We are withdrawing. The words were impossible. The Korthax never retreated. Never. But Skrull looked at his surviving warriors, saw the exhaustion in their eyes, and knew Vorash was right. They had lost, acknowledged Skrull replied. Moving to extraction point. As his warriors fought their way toward the landing site, harassed every step by human forces, Skrull sent a final message to Vorash. The humans are not prey. They are persistence hunters. We cannot outlast them. This was never a fair hunt. We were doomed from the moment we chose them. The retreat from Earth was not a withdrawal. It was a rout. Korthax warriors, who had never known defeat in 12,000 years, scrambled desperately toward extraction points while human forces harried them every step. Dropships trying to recover ground forces were shot down. Those that made it back to orbit found the Korthax fleet under constant attack from Earth's remaining defenses. Huntmaster Vorash watched his civilization's greatest military force disintegrate. Of the 3,000 ships that had attacked Earth, fewer than 1,800 remained combat effective. Of the 200,000 warriors who had landed on the planet's surface, less than half made it back to orbit. The casualty rates were catastrophic, unprecedented, impossible to explain to the High Council. But Vorash no longer cared about the High Council. He cared about survival. He gave the order for the fleet to retreat from human space entirely. The 12th Grand Harvest was over. The Korthax had lost. The news spread through the Korthax dominion like a plague. At first, denial. Then anger. Then something the Korthax had never experienced as a species. Fear. If humans could defeat them, what did that mean for the Korthax's place in the galaxy? What did it mean for their identity as apex predators? Different regions of the Dominion responded in different ways. Some called for a new invasion, this time with their entire military strength. Others suggested abandoning territory near human space and hoping humanity would not pursue. A few radical voices even suggested surrendering to humanity and accepting whatever terms. They demanded. The High Council was paralyzed by indecision. Several members had died in the Battle of Earth, others had returned home in disgrace. The survivors could not agree on what to do next. For the first time in their history, the Korthax had no clear path forward. "What did we teach you?" Torres asked. Skrull thought about his answer carefully. That strength is not the same as power. That endurance matters more than speed. That mercy is not weakness. That former enemies can become allies if both are willing to change. Paused. Then added, and that persistence hunting works on any prey? Even apex predators who thought themselves unchallengeable. Torres laughed. That's a lot of lessons from one war. It was a war worth learning from. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the new generation train. The galaxy still held dangers. The Vrex would return eventually. Other threats would emerge. But humanity and the Korthax would face them together, stronger as allies than they had ever been as enemies. The hunt continues, Skrull thought. But now we hunt together, and the monsters that threaten this galaxy have learned to fear that partnership.